I'm going to show you the top 6 mistakes beginner guitarists make. Here it goes. Hey everyone, this is Mike from Guitar Essentials, and in this lesson I'm going to show you the top 6 common mistakes that beginner guitarists make. Now this is in my opinion, and if for any reason you feel after watching this video that I left some out, feel free to leave a comment. Now if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Really helps out the channel. So the reason we want to avoid these mistakes as a beginner guitar player is we don't want to formulate a habit, because once that habit is established, it's much harder later on to get rid of that mistake, or it will hinder your performance going forward to an advancing level. So number 1, 2, and 3 on the list all affect each other. So watch through the video because they all complement each other in a positive way if you're formulating positive habits. So let's get started with number 1, holding the guitar. So whether you're playing an electric or an acoustic guitar, I highly recommend, whether standing or sitting, that you wear a guitar strap. See, the guitar is centered to my body, and when I stand up, it's the same playing position. And that's the way it should be, whether acoustic or electric guitar. Now here and there, if you don't have a strap, we usually play on our right leg like this. That's what a lot of people call casual position. But then when you go and stand, you don't play with the guitar on your side like that unless you're moving around. So don't do that. The other way is with a classical guitar. If you don't have a strap, you could use a footstool, put it on your left leg, and then the guitar centered to your body. Remember, the classical guitar has been studied for the longest time period before even electric and acoustic steel string guitar existed. They found out that having the footstool and having your guitar centered and on your left leg is much more important. The thing with that though, having your left leg up, it's an uncomfortable position. So I do highly recommend a strap. And then also, keep it upright. My guitar is pretty high on my body, could probably even be higher. Back in the day, I thought it was cool to play with your guitar low. It's actually not so cool because you can't play as well. You can't play with proper finger position. A lot of the guitarists who did that back in the day, and still a lot of guitarists do it today, they cannot play better. They may be comfortable when they're playing rhythms. Rhythm guitar, I could understand, maybe have your strap a little bit lower. But if you're doing any kind of lead work or any kind of intricate work on the guitar, it's so much better to have your guitar placed up. It's funny because those players that used to have their straps down low, when they would go to do a guitar solo, they would go up to the stage monitor and put their leg up on it so that their guitar was upright so that they could play better. Number 2 is to keep your thumb down in your left hand. A lot of times you'll see players with their thumb over. Keep that thumb down. In my opinion, that's an advanced technique. So if I'm going to play a D chord, for instance, and put my thumb over on the F sharp, a D/F sharp chord, I can grab chords. A lot of guitarists like Jimi Hendrix would do, instead of doing a full bar chord, will put their thumb over on the bass note. And I'll use that if need be, but I don't like how it feels because, again, with thumb over or doing this on the neck where your palm's touching the back of the neck, it's not a good thing. So string bending is another time where the thumb could be over. If I'm doing a string bend to get more leverage, my thumb may go over when I'm doing a string bend. And then when I do a scale run or chord, my thumb goes right back into position. So your thumb should always be in correlation to your middle finger. Here's how your positioning should look. Your thumb should be back here. It should always be in correlation to your middle finger. So if your hand moves up the fretboard, your thumb follows. Elbow should be in and then back. Sometimes your elbow could go out a little bit, but not too much. Now, as I said before, 1, 2, and 3 all help each other. So now we're on to number 3. playing with the fingertips of your left hand. If your thumb's down, you're holding your guitar in proper position, you should be able to be playing on the fingertips of your hand. You'll see many times a lot of players, myself included, sometimes I'll play flat-fingered. That's more for an advanced technique. For muting, there's times where I'll do arpeggios where my thumb may be over for a certain reason. But in general, if your thumb's down, your guitar is centered to your body and upright, you can get on your fingertips. And this is what it should look like. Yes? No. Yes? No. Another thing I want to mention is that when you're on your fingertip, that's the boniest part of your finger. You don't have to press as hard. When you're on a 45 or flat, like a bar chord, you're more on the pad. It's a lot more meat to your finger. You have to press a little harder. So try to get really on your fingertip, 90 degrees to the guitar. Also notice that when you're on your fingertips and you're doing a scale run, say just a major scale, and you're starting on the low strings, the 6th string for instance, your palm may be touching the bottom of the fretboard. And that's okay, because that's how you get into that position where you're on your fingertip. Now notice when I ascend the scale, my palm's going to go like that. My thumb's still going to be on the back of the fretboard, same positioning, and then I come back to maintain fingertips. So watch the scale ascending and descending. You notice when I went to the higher strings, there's more room there. When I went back to the low, there's barely any wiggle room. Number 4 is playing in the correct part of the fret. So let's say I take the 3rd fret here. This is the 3rd fret wire. This is the 2nd fret wire. A lot of players just try to position anywhere in between there. Where you want to be butt up against the 3rd fret wire. Not on it, but right before it. You want to be there, not there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play where I'm barely pressing down, right where I should not be. And I'm picking in my right hand. And I'm going to move it, same pressure. And when I get there, I get a clear note with the same pressure. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the point on the fret, butt up against the fret, is the point of least resistance. That's the point where you don't have to press hard at all. A lot of times when we're learning guitar, you'll hear, oh, I got to build up my calluses, my fingers hurt. Well, it's because we're pressing too hard. We're hitting wrong parts of the fret and having to press harder. And we really don't need to. If you're more accurate with where you hit the fret, you'll be way better off. Now for chord playing with certain chords, do what you got to do, right? So if I'm playing a D chord, I can be butt up there with the 2, the 3, and the 1 and make it. That works. But if I play an A major chord with all my fingers stacked, there's no way I can get this first finger right up to the fret wire. So you just have to deal with that. So it's not a perfect science with chord playing, but single note playing, playing a scale, much easier if you're right in the right proper positioning. Next is number 5. This is in the right hand, holding the pick. So I'm using a Dunlop Jazz 3 pick. I really prefer these picks. You can use any pick you want. The Fender medium pick is a standard pick that a lot of people use. There's so many different types, right? So I would experiment with different picks, whether thin, medium, heavy, these smaller Dunlop 3 picks. But regardless of what pick you use, if you're picking single notes, you want to be choked up on the pick, so only a little bit of the surface area of the pick is being exposed. So first of all, use only your pincher fingers, your thumb and your pointer, and you can either be like this, sideways like that, or like this. More often I play like that. But coming from the thumb, only a little bit of the pick is coming out from my fingers, as opposed to this. And we'll talk about strumming, where you can strum with a little more pick surface area coming out, and then I move it over and choke up on the pick like a batter in baseball chokes up on the bat, so that only a little bit of the pick is coming out. You'll be a lot more accurate. When you're like this, picking single notes, you'll get caught in the strings. So what I mean about caught in the strings is you go through a string and you can't get through because your pick gets caught in there. Well, if you only have a little bit of pick coming from the fingers, you can glide right along it. And then strumming, you just have to be looser. Now the other thing is to pick at a 90-degree angle to the string, or perpendicular. As you advance, you can start messing with turning your pick this way or this way to get more speed, but listen to the sound difference. If I'm straight against the string, now I'll turn my pick. You hear this. So you lose sound quality for speed. So in the beginning, be perpendicular, get a really clear tone, as opposed to being on an angle. Too scratchy in tone. Now what I mentioned before about strumming, keep loose in the wrist. You could have more pick surface area coming from your fingers, and hold the pick lightly, almost like you're going to drop it. That's better because then you'll cruise through the strings a little bit easier. So let's say I hold a G chord. You don't want to be aggressive and go. You want to be loose with the hand. You can hear the sound difference. So just be loose with strumming. When you're picking individual notes, you still could be loose and hold the pick lightly, but just choke up on the pick and pick the notes perpendicularly to get a solid tone. All right, and the last one, number 6, is anchoring the pinky on your guitar with the right hand. Whether electric or acoustic players, I see this a lot. There's times where I'll lightly touch, but I'm not anchoring. I'm not keeping my finger there, because then that doesn't allow freedom for your hand to move around this way, which it may need to as you advance, and or up and down. It's kind of weird if your pinky's stuck there. Now, in general, recognize you have a decision as a beginner guitar player to play with your fingers out like this and loose, or your fingers like this, almost like you're making a fist. I tend to play with my fingers out. Feel free to leave a comment to whether you play fingers out or in. I am experimenting with having my fingers in. The problem for me with this is I feel like I'm making a fist and I tense up more. So if you do play with your fingers in, which you can, don't hold the pick with the middle finger, by the way. That could be number 7, perhaps. Just hold it with 2 fingers. But if you do it with a fist, with the fingers in, I should say, not with a fist, make sure you are still playing loosely. There's so many different players who have different picking styles, but just be loose. That's the main thing. So you can experiment with fingers in or fingers out. And don't get used to anchoring your pinky right there. And those are the top 6 common mistakes for beginner guitar players, in my opinion. Again, if you feel I left one out, leave a comment. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Also, in the description, you can find a link to free material. I have scales, chord charts, and PDFs. So check out that link to get some free material. I'll be adding more to that as well in the future. Thanks for watching this lesson, and we'll see you in the next lesson.